batteries right here. They are the start batteries, and there is a isolator and a battery charger, and there's a place where you could conceivably put an inverter here. There's also access to the negative bus bar underneath of this one. This is normally just screwed down. Access the pipes. The boat currently has Group 27 lead acid batteries, and in our commissioning we actually recommend a Group 31, and there's several options available, and I can review that with you which would work best. But the best thing is to keep all your batteries the same, even with the house batteries, which we'll see on the other side of the boat. Underneath of me is a water tank. It's right here, it's colored blue, and there's an access plate for it. Inboard of it is the primary diesel fuel filter, and this particular boat has the Jeanneau brand, and it just unscrews and you put another one back on. In the Starboard Aft Cabin are spaces for 2 Group 31 batteries. Currently we have some Group 27s in here for the show, but we do recommend a very specific battery for this boat, and it's best to keep them all the same. There are 3 in the other cabin, which I'll show you. There's a battery charger right here. This is a 60 amp battery charger. There's a battery isolator, and there are primary fuses for some of the systems here on this little bulkhead. And then there are 3 switches with a crossover here for the motor and the ground shutoff. The ground shutoff is actually something that you might not see quite often, but it's very handy for winter storage, because you can actually have a power draw through the ground cable, and that way it'll keep your batteries fresh over the winter if you charge them at the beginning of the winter. And that's right here on this bulkhead.
The interior of the boat is pretty much modularized construction. Pretty much anything you see can come apart. Underneath of any of the settees or behind any of the cabinets, hanging lockers, etc., you could remove panels to get to spaces that you may need to put, say, a vent for an S-bar or Wabasco heater.
The boats come with good mattresses for both the aft cabins and the forward cabin. They're about 5 inches thick, have a nice patterned cloth on it, and they come wrapped in plastic from the factory to protect them. In the port aft cabin are 3 spaces for Group 31 batteries. There is a autopilot control, and there's a fuel tank underneath where I am sitting. The fuel tank is colored black, the water tanks are colored blue, and the holding tanks are colored green. On top of the tank is a fuel pickup and a secondary fuel pickup for an S-bar or Wabasco heater, and they both have fuel shutoffs. There's also very clear access to the fuel sender for the gauge. With the 3 batteries here, it's possible to tie in one of the 2 batteries on the other side into the house. That can give you between 3 and 4 batteries for the house batteries, Group 31, and that's quite a bit of power for this boat.
Jeanneau makes the batteries easy to access. Here again we see Group 27s, but they're in Group 31 boxes. We put in the 31s, and they're all easy to get out. They weigh about 75 pounds apiece, and they're easy to pull out, put on the floor, and heft up the companionway stairs.
In the construction of the Jeanneaus, there is something called a grid or floors. Floors are a more traditional word for it, but a grid is a separate piece that's placed inside the boat when the boat is still being manufactured. The belly of the boat receives a pan and floor grid. Then Jeanneau cuts out the center sections of that molded grid and tabs it in with fiberglass, which I'll show you. That's actually quite rare in this business. Normally what happens is the grid is glued to the pan with a polyester or vinyl ester resin or even a sealant. The issue is with that is if you have an impact with the boat, meaning if you hit a rock or something, or coral with a keel, it creates a stress that can break the grid free, just popping it loose. Then the pan is then holding the entire weight of the keel. It is better to have a grid or floor that is fiberglassed in. And Jeanneau is one of the few builders that actually does that. And it's a very important thing to look at. In our boatyard that I run, we've had to repair boats that have had grids that have popped free, and I can list down several manufacturers that build their boats that way. Here we can see how the grid has had the center sections removed and the fiberglass has been tabbed in. Here you can see where it goes from smooth to rough. That's the fiberglass cloth actually bonding it to the hull itself. This is the hull right here. And you can see all throughout that it's all fiberglass. The keel bolts on the boat are substantial, have plenty of thread, and big 3/8" backing plates made from stainless steel. The boat has a sump, and you'll see some non-tox antifreeze in there for winterization. So here we see the bilge pump and the manual bilge pump going into the sump. The bilges are deep enough to allow water to sit in the bilge as opposed to coming up onto the floor or the cabin sole when the boat is heeling over. Here in the forward cabin we can see more of the substantial floor grid, the knot meter transducer, and the most forward keel bolt. Up here in the Vee Berth we have another water tank, easy to get to the fills and the vent. We also have PEX type fittings that are easy to change. Under here we have batteries for the bow thruster and the forward windlass. And there's a bow thruster right here which I'll show you, and the solenoid for it, and the bus bars. Everything's all very easy to get to. In the very forward section there's another hatch that comes out, and you have the solenoid for the windlass itself, the anchor windlass. There are two batteries in the bow, one for the anchor windlass and one for the bow thruster. There's the solenoid for the bow thruster. Water tank inspection port and connections. Anchor windlass solenoid. The engine is a Yanmar 4JH4. Secondary filters here. There is a raw water impeller here. A blower for the engine room here. You can fill your oil here. There's an expansion tank aft which is accessed through another compartment, but you could also fill antifreeze here. Each head has its own holding tank. This is above the water line, has an inspection port, and has a through hole in the bottom that can be opened to empty the tank when needed, or it's pumped out through the deck. In the aft head we have a pump out for the shower, through hulls, and a Y valve. Underneath the salon settee is an oversized water tank. Quite unusual for a boat this size. Plenty of capacity for a large crew. Behind the starboard salon seat is the water pump, the shower drain pump for the forward head, and an expansion tank. There's also a manifold here, all PEX. The port aft cabin access hatch for the engine has access to the alternator, the water pump, starter and starter solenoid, engine mounts, wiring harness. Aft port locker, we have the master cutoff for the AC, and there is a autopilot pump. Down below we have through hulls and exhaust hose. Starboard aft locker, we have one propane tank and room for another.
In the life raft locker there is an access hatch, and here you can see the rudder post and the stop collar. Thanks for watching, and please contact me if you'd like to have any more information on the systems on any of the Jeanneau models.